Hello everyone, I am Snigdha Kakkar and this is my channel Accelerate AI Careers. Today we are going to solve a hard level LeetCode problem, text justification. It's LeetCode 68. It is one of the worst rated questions on LeetCode, specifically because some of the edge cases are quite tough and they're not clearly articulated in this statement of the question. So I have broken down the question into easier steps such that you can understand them and laid out specific code for those steps for you. I will walk you through them, but this question is an all-time favorite for Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. So I'll suggest you to do this question and let me know if you have a better way to solve it. I would be happy to learn from you. So let's dig deeper into it. You have been given an array of string words such as shown in this example. So like you can see, there are several words given to you in an array here. And you have been given a max width of a sentence you can take. So you have to combine all these words into a document sort of form, that is a paragraph, which is broken down into sentences. And those sentences have max width. Those sentences should have at least one space between each consecutive word, even though it is not clear from the instructions given here. But there is necessary that one space should be there between each of those two words. And apart from that, you have to limit the max length of each line by whatever max width has been given to you. Let me explain it to you by this example, and that would be better way to explain it. Suppose this is an example of text justification. So if you see, this word is 4 character length, and then is 2 character length, and an is 2 character length. So first word, this is 4 character length, is 2 character length, and then an is 2 character length. So it comes out to be 8 character length, right? But you also have to count bare minimum spaces, that is one space between each of the words. So you have two space values. So basically you have to add one space here between these two words, and you have to add one space here between the two words. That is, between this and is, there should be at least one character space, and between is and there should be one character space. So instead of 8, this comes out to be 10. But your max width is 16. Then you must be wondering why we have not taken example also as a part of first line. So if you count the length of example word, it comes out to be 7 characters, right? And you also have to take one additional space between an and example if you have to take example as a part of line 1. So if you take, say, suppose you take it in line 1, then one space and 7 character length here, it comes out to be 18. But your max width of the sentence needs to be 16. Hence, you have taken example as a part of second line. So I hope that is clear to you. Now, same way, second line, example of text. So example of text, example word is 7 characters, of word is 2 characters, and text word is 4 characters. So it comes out to be 13 characters. And max width is 16. But you also have to account for two spaces, one here and one here. So it comes out to be 15 characters, okay? And max width is 16. And the next word is quite long, so you cannot take it upwards. So this explains how number of words is decided for each line. But how does the space gets divided? That's next case. So if you have a lot of space remaining, but how do you get the additional space? So like your maximum width was 16, but in your first line, the number of characters in words covered is 8, right? So the additional space you can take is 16 minus 8, that is 8, right? Now this 8 space needs to be divided evenly between the total number of spaces. So each word with the other word has to be having space equal or almost equal to the next word space. So you have to divide this 8 equally, hence 4 here and 4 here. That's how the space has been divided. But you also need to account that you have to take bare minimum of 1 character space between two words. That's a condition, okay? But what if this difference is not even, this difference is odd? That case can be checked in the line 2. If you see, the words here in line 2 are of character length 13 and the maximum width is 16. So the difference comes out to be 3. Now how do you divide these 3 spaces? You cannot divide them like 3 divided by 2 because there are 2 spaces. You cannot do 1.5 character, 1.5 character space each. So in those scenario, you have to do almost equal. So how do you do it? You would first divide 3 by number of spaces needed. So number of spaces needed is 2 here. And whatever division, you will get 1 here. So at least you will add that space between all the words. Now you will take modulo 3, modulo 2, and that also comes out to be 1. So whatever this comes, you will divide it in greedy form. That's what have been provided in the question. So instead of dividing it like anywhere, you have to divide and sample it greedily, and you have to give more space towards the left, starting from the left, and reduce it towards the right. But you also have to keep in mind that the difference between space here and the space here should be less than 2 characters. That is, it can maximum be 1 characters. So you can never do this if the modulo is 2. You cannot do this that you give 2 extra spaces of character here and here the difference comes out to be 2. No, you cannot do that. You always have to keep the difference to 1. Suppose you might have had a 4th word here and you have a difference of 2 to give. So you will give 1 extra space here, 1 extra space here, whereas 1 less space here. That way the difference between the consecutive ones remains maximum up to 1. So you cannot increase that difference between space lengths to more than 1. I hope that is clear. That's one of the edge cases. There are 2 more edge cases I want to discuss. So if you see the last line, in the last line justification words is quite long and then there is a full stop as given in the question here in the last word. But after that there is a trailing space. If you see in the above lines there is no trailing space, and that will be true in most of the cases. But in the last line there is a trailing space. That's because in the question the instruction has been given that the last line will always be left justified. That is, there will not be any leading space, there will always be a trailing space. If you have more than 1 words, you will divide those words like this, like shall be has been divided with 1 space. You cannot give more space between these words, and you will keep all the rest of the space to be trailing. So that is the edge case they have given for the last line. But there is one more edge case which they have not explained in the question above. I think that is why this question has been rated low by so many users on LeetCode. But that particular condition they have given here in edge case. So note that the second line is also left justified because it contains only 1 word. So that is the other condition. If you have 1 word in a line, it could be second line, could be third line, could be last line. If you have just 1 word, then it would be left justified and all the trailing spaces will come after that word. So that's the last edge case. So now let me summarize what all are the conditions. First of all, you have to always meet the condition for max width. That's how you divide the words. You have to keep bare minimum of 1 space length between 2 words always. That's another thing. That's how you decide the number of words in each line. Now, if there are more spaces to be distributed, in that case, you try to divide them as evenly as possible. But if even distribution is not possible, in that case, you try to keep the difference between consecutive spaces maximum to 1. And how do you divide it? You divide the total number of extra spaces by the number of spaces required and you get the division. Whatever division comes, that space you give to everyone, like all spaces. And you take the modulo. Whatever modulo result comes, that space you divide starting from left in greedy method, okay? Remember, the difference between consecutive spaces should not be more than 1. Now the last 2 conditions is that the last line should always be left justified. If there are more than 1 words in the last line, the space between them should be 1 and rest all of the space should be trailing. And the last edge case is that if your line has only 1 word like shown here, even though it is not last line, it should be left justified and there should be trailing space after that. There should not be any leading space before that. So I hope all the conditions are clear to you. Now we will start coding it. If you have any doubts regarding the explanation of the algorithm we are going to use or any spaces where in the code you get stuck, mention them in the comments. I'll be happy to help you understand it better. So first of all, I will initialize my result array and I will be appending once my each line is complete to this result array. And for tracking my line, I will initialize an empty list, an empty array. And for tracking my current line length, I will initialize a length variable with 0 value. After that, I will initialize my I pointer to loop around the entire length of the word string. And I'll initialize it with 0. Now I will check while I is less than length of words. So it will loop around this words entirely. Okay. After this, I have 2 conditions to meet. Either the line is complete and I can append it to the results after adding extra spaces, or the line is not complete. Okay. These are the only 2 scenarios you can have, right? So if the line is not complete, In that case, what do? In that case, you append the current word, which is words I, to the line, because the line is not complete, right? And you also have to increment the length. And how do you increment the length? You add the length of words I to this current length, okay? And don't forget to increment the I pointer because you are looping. So this is for line not complete. So you have to check for current words I and then add it to the line, increase the length accordingly and move the pointer. Once the line is complete, in that scenario, if the current line is complete, first of all, how would you check if the current line is complete? To check if the current line is completed or not, what I will do is I'll check if length of the current line, which I've captured in the length variable, plus one space between two of words. How do you get the number of spaces? You get the number of spaces by getting the length of the array line. So that will count the number of words and that's how you get the number of spaces. And then you add the length of words I, because you are checking whether words I can be accommodated there or not. So that hence I am getting the length of the current line, like what is the total length of words in the line, then length of the spaces. And length of spaces would be one space for each. And how do you get the length of spaces? By getting the length of words in the line. Thus I'm getting it. Plus you add the current word there to see if it can be accommodated. How do you see it can be accommodated? Compare it with max width. That's how you check if the line is complete or not. So after this, to check whether the line is complete, you calculate the extra space. So if this condition is true that it is greater than max width, the current length of all the words in the line, plus length of line, that is the number of spaces, plus length of words I, that is the current word. If it is complete, that is it is greater than max width, that means the current words I cannot be accommodated here. So in that case, I calculate my extra space. And how do I calculate my extra space? Width, I take max width and subtract length of the line from it. So that's how I get the extra space. Now, how do I divide it? So to divide it, like I explained, extra space, whatever space I have to be divided, I divide it by length of line. But there's an edge case here. First of all, it's not length of line, but length of line minus 1, because I don't have to add one space after the last word. Hence length of line minus 1. But there is an edge case here. If suppose there is only one word, say for example in example 1 there was justification. If there is just one word in the line, in that case 1 minus 1 equal to 0. So division by 0 error will come up. To handle that division by 0 error in case of one word in a line, you have to use max of 1, comma length of line minus 1. So you have to give the denominator as 1 rather than 0. Okay. So that's how you handle the extra space. So you got the spaces. Now excessive space which needs to be divided, if the situation is uneven, that is your total number of space characters is not even. In that case, you take the modulo, and the modulo will also be by this, so that there is no division by 0 error. So same thing. And then you loop around the total range for j in range, and you have to loop around length of line minus 1 to divide the spaces. But again, you have to take, so there could be an edge case here as well, that you have to handle that case where there is only one word, it's always left justified. To handle that, you have to take max of 1, comma, that's so that the space can be divided evenly. And then after that you check line j and you add the spaces. So you add spaces, and in Python you can add space by multiplying by the number of spaces you need to add. That's how you add the space, and at jth character you are adding the space. So if there is a remainder, that is the space is unevenly divided and we need to add the remaining space, so you check for that and then you divide it from starting from left. Okay, so line j plus equal to space, and you decrement the remainder by 1 character. So that's how you handle it. So it will keep on running unless your remainder is non-zero. Until then it will keep on running. And now you can append the line to the result because your line has gotten completed. Remember, you have not added words I here because it was greater than max width here. See row number 8. There you checked the line and length, and you saw that if you add words I, it will be greater than max width. So you have not added words I here, but your line is complete. You have distributed the spaces as evenly as possible. So you can append your result. How do you append the result? Since you have taken the line in the form of array, but you need to join it to the result in the form of a string. So I will use dot join line. That's how you add it here. And now, since you have to move to the next line, you have to reset these variable line and length again. So that's what I have copied and pasted it here. And I will write a comment here that I'm resetting line and length for next line. I hope this is clear. Okay. So now I already handled this case that line is not complete. Okay. So now what else? We have not handled the last line. We have handled that case when there is only one word in the line. And how do we handle it? In that case, we run the j loop range max 1 to length of line minus 1. In case of just one word in the line, you add those spaces like this. You divide the remainder space and keep on decrementing the remainder. But you have not handled the last line. So to handle the last line, I will define last line first. And what does last line accommodate? Last line would be space dot join, because you have to take only one space per character, right? You cannot take more than one space per character in last line because it's left justified as per the question's condition. So I'm taking only one space character and joining it. And you have to calculate the remaining space. So I will name the variable as trail space. And how do you compute the remaining space? You check the max width and you subtract the length of last line, actually. Length of last line from it. So that's how you get the remaining space which you can accommodate, and you append it to the result. And how do you append it? So what do you exactly need to append? You take the last line which you have taken space dot join line, right? So you take the last line plus you take a space character and multiply it by how many number of trailing spaces you need, which you have computed just now. So this is your entire result. And now finally, since you have handled all the edge cases, you can return the result. So let's run it and see if the question works. So it's accepted. Let's submit. So as you can see, our solution is somewhere here, which is quite good. It beats 42% solutions. I agree that it's a tough question. It's not an easier question. So let me walk you through the code again to summarize what all are the edge cases, how we have handled each edge case. And if there is some clarification you need, or you feel like this should not be handled this way, this could have been handled, in a better manner, mention them in the comments. So let me give you the summary of the code. I first initialize my result array, where I will be appending the statements or the lines which I get from each line after joining the words from the words array, okay? Then I initialize current line variable by an array, and remember, by an array, not by a string, and length by 0, length of current line. And I initialize my I pointer by 0. Now I run a while loop while the length of words is still there. I have not looped around the entire words array. Then I check if my line is complete and I can add it to the result, or if my line is not complete. So simple cases, my line is not complete. In that case, I have to add current word, that is words I, to my line, and I have to increment my length of current line, which will be incremented by length of words I, and I also have to increment my I pointer and keep on incrementing until my line can accommodate those words. So I have handled the case for line is not complete. Now if the line is complete, but how do you check if the line is complete? To check that, I take the length of the current line plus one space between two consecutive words. How do you get the number of required spaces? You get it by length of words in the line. So length of line plus you have to take the length of current word which needs to be added, which is words I. If the entire combination, that is one space minimum between two words, total length of the words in the line plus length of the current word to be added is greater than max width, in that case you cannot add the current word and line is complete. So then you enter this loop. You compute the extra space. Extra space is computed by taking max width variable given in the question and subtract the length of current line. So once you get the extra spaces, that is the space you have to divide as evenly as possible. So how much space do you give to every space number? So to get that, you divide it by length of line minus 1. Why do I do minus 1? Because I don't want to add any space after the last word. Hence I am subtracting 1 here. But then there could be a division by 0 error if the length of line is 1. Hence, I have taken max of 1 comma length of line minus 1 to handle that case. And say suppose the space cannot be divided evenly and it has to be divided using greedy sampling method starting from left side as given in the question in case of odd spaces. So I have to take the modulo by the same denominator and get the remainder space to be divided using greedy method of sampling. Now I'll loop around the length of line minus 1 because I don't need to give any space in the last after the last word, hence minus 1. And I have to handle that edge case where any middle line or any second line, third line has only one word, like given in example 2 here. Acknowledgement is just one word. To handle that scenario, I take max of 1 comma length of line minus 1 so that at least it runs through this loop. And then I add those spaces by using line j. So I'm adding spaces to jth character. And how many spaces do I add? The spaces which I have computed here by dividing by max of 1 line length of line minus 1. So I add those spaces. Now I check if there is a remainder, if the spaces need to be divided as evenly but the spaces are odd. In that case, I check if there is a remainder and I add those spaces in line j and decrement remainder and keep on doing it unless remainder turns out to be 0. And finally, after I exit the loop, I can append the line by joining it as a string to the result. Because right now the line is an array as initialized, so I have to first convert it to string and then add it to the result. Now I have to reset my line and length to empty array and 0 respectively to start for the next line. So I hope these all scenarios are clear. There's only one edge case which I have not handled here. I've even handled the edge case of any intermediate line having only one word, which I'm handling here so that it at least runs to the loop once. But I have only not handled one edge case, which is the last line. The last line has not been added to the question anywhere. So to add the last line, I will just join the line with a space character because there needs to be one space character between all the words in the last line and not more. So I add it like that and then I calculate the trailing spaces. So trailing spaces length is calculated by taking max width and subtracting length of last line. Whatever trailing space is there, I can multiply it by one space and add it to the last of the line. And finally, I can append it to the result and return the result. So this is your entire code. I know it's a tough one, but it's a good question. So solve it yourself, pause the videos wherever necessary, ask your relevant questions and try to do it once or twice yourself. Let me know how do you like my way of solving problems. If you really like my way of solving problems, subscribe to my channel to get your daily LeetCode updates and solve the questions with me. Thank you.